Last night's fiery debate left candidates fielding attacks from all ends of the debate stage. And while each of the candidates had their good and bad moments, one clear winner seems to be emerging. That winner was in Washington. Actually, no, President Trump. He gets to spend the next several weeks, maybe months, watching these Democrats tear one another apart. Exactly what he wants. Joining me now, Washington Post White House Bureau Chief and MSNBC political analyst Phil Rucker, former communications director for the Jeb 2016 campaign and contributor for The Bulwark, Tim Miller, and back with me, Jason Johnson. Phil, the president and his allies, no matter what happens, always come out saying, we won, we're the best, no one can stop us. But today, they seem especially giddy.
Yeah, Steph, the president enjoyed watching the blood sport of that debate last night, and the more acrimonious this Democratic primary becomes, the more advantageous Trump and his advisors believe their hand is going into the general election. Last night, the president was traveling after his rally in Arizona back to Las Vegas to stay the night at his hotel, and he invited the press pool up to his cabin on Air Force One to watch the debate with him. That's a sign of how confident he felt about the show going on the other side. But we should keep in mind that the 2016 debates were really nasty involving Trump, and he went on to win. And same thing about 2008 with Obama and Hillary Clinton in their Democratic primary debates.
But those 2016 Republican debates, did we walk away from them seeing Trump as a loser? Isn't that where Trump, whether he was telling the truth or not, kind of clean up, Tim?
Well, for sure. Look, I don't know if the acrimony is the reason why Trump's happy today. I think it's the potential opponent that's why he's happy. To me, it looks like Bernie Sanders is on a glide path. Acrimony isn't an issue in the Democratic primary. It's who it's aimed at. You know, Pete's fighting Amy. Warren's fighting Bloomberg. Nobody's fighting Bernie, who right now is in clear position to become the nominee of the Democratic Party. And you know, Pete tried to take him on last night and got a couple good punches in. Bloomberg had one good line after a terrible first hour. But, you know, hey, who is the person that's going to stand in the way of Bernie Sanders' nomination? It's not clear right now. And so if you're of the theory that the president and his team want to see Bernie Sanders, they're happy about what happened last night.
Okay, then, Jason, if you're of that theory that President Trump wants to run against Bernie Sanders,
yes.
And if you're also of the theory that the #1 priority for Democrats is to defeat Donald Trump, how do you solve for the fact that Bernie Sanders is doing as well as he is? Senator Sanders.
Well, I don't think it's something to be solved. If Bernie Sanders gets...
You don't think it's something to be solved? Isn't that the #1 thing to be solved?
The #1 thing is defeating Donald Trump, but you can't defeat Donald Trump by in any shape, way, or form messing with the process or making it unfair. If Bernie Sanders ends up winning, then Bernie Sanders ends up winning. Now, I think what's key, though, is that if Bernie Sanders wins, you have to make sure that he is actually a functional candidate. He would have to be able to get through a contested convention, because I don't think he's going to get 1990. That is what people should be thinking about. I don't believe there is a magical candidate right now that could go against him. And I think to the degree that you make the narrative, we've got to take out Bernie Sanders, you feed into some of the worst elements of his own campaign, and you inherently weaken whoever's going against him. This is still an open race. Treating this like we have to take down Bernie Sanders, I think that's ridiculous. I don't think that's fair to the Democratic process at this point.
But isn't that the way campaigns work? I'm not saying you have to cheat and go outside the process.
Right.
But isn't the way a campaign works, or any race works,
right,
take out the guy in the lead?
Right. You have to take out the guy in the lead, but you have to have somebody who can actually stop them based on their own message, not just because there's some inherent fear that this person is headed towards failure. That's what I think the distinction is, and that's what I think Democrats need to think about. Who's the person who everybody else likes, not just the person who we think can kneecap Bernie Sanders. You can't kneecap Bernie Sanders. Nothing can stop him with his base.
Well, you
except
can try.
Somebody who, yeah, but if you try, then you play into everything that they want. Bernie Sanders' whole thing is, I'm a victim of these evil, terrible millionaires, even though I am one, and the Democratic Party is part of that cabal trying to stop me.
So he's going to play them, and they're going to say, listen, we can't go after Bernie because they're going to say we're cheating, and they're going to give it to him?
If they're dumb enough to do that. There were people last night, like Mike Bloomberg, who finally went after Bernie Sanders the way that you're supposed to. You don't want to get into some high-minded grad school conversation about Medicare for all. You want to say, look, this guy and his staff and his organization, his plan don't work. That is how you run a campaign, and then you rally people around you, not by just going after Bernie Sanders. It's not going to work that way. That's how he was successful in 2016.
Jason, why isn't Bloomberg doing it on TV, though? Look, here's the thing. His campaign manager was on earlier and said, you know, Mike just needs some time to get his legs under him. He had a terrible debate last night. This race is functionally over in 12 days. I lived through this in 2016 trying to stop Donald Trump. Once Super Tuesday is finished, if there's a candidate with a big delegate lead, they're going to win the nomination. Mike Bloomberg spending $300 million on TV right now on these positive ads. How about spend $100 million of that, at least educating people about Bernie Sanders' record? I'm not saying be dirty. I'm not saying lie about him, but educate them and try to create an alternative choice. Right now, Bloomberg is holding this race hostage while we wait to see how he does in Super Tuesday. He did bad in the debate last night. If he does bad on Super Tuesday, the race is over. His claim is that he's getting in this race to prevent Bernie Sanders from winning. That was sort of his gambit. But right now, he's helping pave the way for just that. You know, if he was running negative ads, if the establishment Democrats were getting behind the current delegate leader, Mayor Pete, who's nobody's talking about because they're waiting for Bloomberg on Super Tuesday, maybe there'd be a chance to stop Bernie. But right now, nobody's doing it, and they're just going to let him, I think, glide to the nomination if something doesn't change in the next 12 days.
Or
that's
Phil Rucker,
that's the window.
12 days left. Bloomberg campaign manager Kevin Sheekey 2 days ago tweeted, "There is so much opposition research against Bernie Sanders, it could fill Trump's empty Foxconn facility in Wisconsin." You know who has that opposition research? President Trump. If these other Democrats aren't using it now, President Trump's going to be using it in months from now. Do they need to change strategy?
Of course, Stephanie. I mean, and Trump is stockpiling money, hundreds of millions of dollars at the Republican National Committee that they intend to use as soon as the Democrats have a presumptive nominee to help define that nominee for general election voters, especially in those states that Sanders as the nominee would have to win, Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And so there is a real danger ahead.
All right. My goodness. Danger ahead. That means there's going to be a lot more for us to discuss. Thank you, gentlemen. It's going to be a busy day here. At the top of the hour, Roger Stone will appear in front of a judge for his sentencing. This follows a week of controversy after the 4 leading prosecutors